Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to another Learning Live. Got lots of people joining in tonight. And I need to go over to this screen, and there's Kris's desk. Hello, Kris.
Hi there.
So I see everyone joining in. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Our last Learning Live of August. Kris is going to be talking about one of her favorite products and one of my new favorite products, and that is collage paper. So people are joining in. We've got a bunch of eyeballs on, and Kris, I'm going to mute up and you can take it away. Anyone who is watching, feel free to pop your questions in the comments. Maybe just say hello and let us know where you're tuning in from, and I will let Kris take it away.
Alrighty, thank you, Sherry. So tonight we're going to play around with collage paper, mixed media collage paper, and the Dina Wakley line, Dina Wakley Media from Ranger, has quite a vast variety of them, and we have most of these. I think the only thing we don't have in the store right now is the faces, but we have quite a variety of different kinds of shapes and colors and patterns. Well, not colors, they're black and white or white. Um, but definitely shapes and text and all kinds of different fun things. It's harder to see them like this than when I use them. So I think I'm just going to move them away, but show you that we do have a large variety. And we also have sentiments. So you can cut these apart in different bits and pieces, or just if you want to, take the whole thing and slap it down on your artwork. So I'm going to move these guys out of the way so you can actually see what these papers look like and a couple of the things that I'm doing with them tonight. So the first thing I want to say is I'm only doing a small portion of what is possible with these collage papers, and I am focusing on the treatment of the surface of the papers and one aspect of how you could use it. There are so many more possibilities, so many more different places you can use them than what I'm actually going to have time to show tonight, but I'll address those as we get to the middle to end of the demo. So the first thing I want to do is just show you a couple of options in the type of tissues that you get. All the tissues are the same weight and have the same shiny surface on one side and dull surface on the other side. I tend to use the shiny side because that is the actual printed side. So whenever you're using black, the black is more intense on the shiny surface side than it is when you turn it over on the dull side. So I'm sure you can see that there. So these come in black on white and white on white, and they excite me. Kind of a weird way to put it, but there's so many fun things to do with them. So let me first start with the first thing. We're going to be using inks. We're going to be using mica stain. We're going to be using all kinds of products. The collage medium after we get our pieces worked on. So the first thing we're going to do in the shop, we've just received in, I guess, the last month, some fluorescent acrylic paints that partner up with our regular line, which is the more primary colors. But these guys are fluorescent, and I just love them because they have so much pop. And I'm just going to steal. Oh, I'm going to grab my black distress ink.
Kris, before you get too much further in,
Yeah.
Ellen has a question, and I'm not sure if you know the answer or not.
Okay.
She's asking, 49 and Market has a thinner paper, and it comes in one of those little envelopes. Is that also considered collage paper, or is that something different?
I'm not sure I know exactly what you're talking about, Ellen. Um,
Some of the lines came with, or there was a little packet, I think it was called collage paper, but it's my understanding that those were more like a paper and less like a tissue.
right. So
Um,
this is very tissue-like. This is like the stuff you would put in your gifts.
so, Alan, the next time you're in the shop, let's take a look and see if we've got any in stock, or if you can remember to bring some, then we'll happily take a look at it.
Yeah. If it's a tissue comes in a number of different weights. You can get really light tissue, which is very hard to actually work with because it's too light almost. It tears and rips very easily. And then you can go all the way to an almost vellum-like tissue, which is much sturdier. But then I find you lose the ability to make your papers a little more translucent. So this product, the Dina Wakley product, is somewhere in the middle. So it doesn't get destroyed with water, and it doesn't hold too fast together that water won't affect it if you put some pressure on it. And I'll show you what I mean when I show you how to tear parts of your tissues apart to put on your projects. You've got a couple of different options there. So let me just get some pages prepared, and then I'll jump into those techniques of how to rip and tear and fussy cut and do that. And I hope that that question has at least been put on hold so that we can take another look at that. I can follow up with that. So I'm just going to make a little bit of a tealy color, and you don't want to put straight acrylic on top of your tissue if you're trying to make a transparent tissue and you want the white to show. It will cover, acrylic can cover too harshly. What I want to do is build a washy acrylic surface. And the reason why I'm using acrylic in this case is because after I'm done, I don't want to be able to activate it with water. So acrylic, once it's dry, will not get activated by water, whereas a distress paint or spray, ink spray, will get affected. Wow, I put too much green in there. Just a little more blue. And I'm going to put a tad of black because I want it to go towards the tealy turquoisey side rather than the bluey turquoisey side. So I'm just mixing this up with my palette really quickly here. My palette knife, that is. I'm losing half my words. Okay, so that looks really bright, but magic, a little bit of black, oops, will go a long way. There we go. Don't even need that much. There we go. Now we're going to get that tealy turquoisey color. So the trick to making that teal color is blue and green together, a little more blue than green, and a touch of black. All right, now I've got my color. I'm going to loosen my color up. I'm going to use a big brush because I've got a big piece of paper. I'm just going to get a tiny bit of water here. I don't want too much because I want it to be loose, but I don't want it to be pale necessarily. And make sure you wipe off your palette knife so you don't waste any of your gorgeous acrylic paint. And then you just paint over it. And don't worry about the wrinkles. Wrinkles are supposed to happen, just like with us, as we age. All right, and don't worry if you get it in your puddle because we're going to try to get this color on both sides. And I might have to make a little bit more. So I just flip my paper over and I'm just going in with my paintbrush. I'm going to add, see if I can stretch this just a little bit further. There we go. And I'm painting both sides of the paper. The reason I'm doing that is because I like how painting one side is great. You get the brush marks going in one direction, but if you paint the other side in the opposite direction, you've got a more washy look. It doesn't look so regulated. Now, it's going to be hard to see this at the moment. Let me see if I can find something dark to put behind it.
It's actually showing up really well, Kris.
Is it? Oh,
yeah,
great.
It's very cool.
Okay, so this looks very transparent right now. It will dry and become less transparent, but the neat thing is the white shows up. So even though you can see my hand through this at this time because it's wet, you still will have that when it dries, it becomes a little more opaque, I guess, or less see-through. You can still see the white pop out. All right, so I'm just going to set that aside. So that's the first thing you can do is you can paint it. And I painted it with all one color, but you don't have to paint it with just one color. You can paint it with multiple colors. And in this example, I started off with a wash of pink, and then I moved into blue and just mixed the two of them together, and I painted both sides, and it looks pretty cool. And the other one I did, which I'll show you in just a few minutes. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry. Stop talking, Kris. Let it dry. All right, so grab one of my grungy paper towels because we never waste any of the beautiful color. Just going to wipe this down. I'm going to keep that black there for a minute. I may or may not use it. Wipe off this. And I'm going to show you a second way of applying color here. And there's many, 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 many more. You can use crayon. You can use watercolor. Tonight I'm just using distress sprays, some mica spray, and acrylic. That's all I have time for. Alrighty, so the next thing I'm going to do is use my sprays. So here's another piece of paper, double-sided. You can see the difference between the front side and the back side. And there's nothing wrong with using the back side if that's what you prefer and you don't want the piece to pop out of your page. You just turn it over so it recedes a little bit. I use both sides of the page. I try to avoid things that have a directional element to it, like writing or words. I would not really, I mean, it's okay to have them backwards, but to me, I'm a bit linear that way. I kind of like, if you have a letter on there, let's make sure people see it. All right.
Linear is a good term.
Yeah, I was going to say something else, but I won't. All right, so on this one, I'm using Salvage Patina, Mica Stain Holly Branch, which is from last Christmas, and Prize Ribbon, and their distress inks are distress stains. So I'm just going to plop a little bit on. I'm not really paying attention to anything in particular. And this is like way more stain than you probably need. Actually, I'm going to add this guy last because he's the one that has the shimmer. So I'm just going to pop some water on there, and I'm just going to dab a little bit. Now, you can flip this over and smoosh. It does have the ability to do some smooshing, and it's okay if things wrinkle up. Okay, except that I have two colors that are very similar, so I've just lost one of my colors by smooshing this way. But that's okay, because I can add that color in. Let's just lay that out again. Whoa. And I'm going to pick up some of this, because that's just a little too much blue now. I'm going to tap off the blue I don't really want, because I don't want it to be soaking wet when I go to put it to dry, because if it's soaking wet, then I'll end up with getting ink everywhere. And now I can go back in and highlight some areas. And I'm just going to let that sit. And I'm now going to take my mica spray, or stain, which you do have to shake. Oh, there. You got to get that bow rolling in there.
While you're shaking, Kris, how do you set it to dry? Do you put it on paper towel or do you put it on something so that it doesn't get ink everywhere?
Yes. Well, what I mean is, yes, you should probably not put it anywhere you want to not have ink on it. I'm in my craft room and pretty much everything has ink on it. And sometimes it's meant to be that way, and other times it's a big mistake. I literally right now have just thrown that piece of paper over my garbage can, the side of my garbage can. So because you tap off the really wet ink, it doesn't drip. Not like if you had a really wet piece of cardstock with ink on it. So I'm just gonna, whoa. Okay, sorry. Look at that. That is cool. So this I'm gonna leave on there, and I'm gonna dry the surface a little bit with my heat gun, because I actually don't want it to blend together. I want it to be sort of hockey. So give me a quick second there, and I'll bring it up to the camera. Yes, many times I have created work with inks, and they've been a little bit wet. And probably every piece of furniture in this room has had an accident at some point with some kind of a liquid stain or ink or dye. Alrighty. Still not completely dry, but look at that. Whoa. So that is using mica sprays and ink stain. So I'm just going to let that dry. This one is a little wetter than usual because it is done with actual liquid versus the acrylic. So I'm going to put that aside to dry for a quick second. And my cloth is getting nice and colorful, cleaning up all this mess. All right, so far we've got acrylic paint and we've got spray. And now we are going to do some stamping. So this was my original piece. It's not quite dry. You can still see which side is the good side, because one side is smoother, the other side has a bit of a rougher texture to it. So it looks like the back of a tissue, like a Kleenex tissue. So I'm just going to dry this a tiny bit because I don't want my ink to disappear. So you can stamp on the surface of any tissue, but I kind of like to do stamping on both sides, because in the same way that the surfaces are all printed either black or white on one side and it's more intense of a color, the same thing happens with your ink that you use for stamping. So I've just got some archival black here, jet black. And you do need to use archival because if your paper is slightly wet, you'll have some smudging happening, and I don't really want smudging. So I'm just going to tap this in. And this is one of those woodware texture stamps. And these are circles, so I thought linear might be fun to play with a little bit. And I'm not even concerned about what direction they go in. I'm just kind of randomly going to put stamps, and I'm not going to go everywhere, and I can go off if I want, but I should wipe it up so I don't get that on the back. Maybe a little over here. There we go. All right, now I'm going to flip it over, and do you see how the intensity is different? Let me get a good one that you can test. See how one is much darker than the other? So if you have that on both sides, you can play with either side of the paper and not worry about what you're doing in terms of whether you have it in the right direction or not. Go off the paper a bit there. All right, a little off here. And don't worry about getting this on your mat because you can clean it with hand sanitizer. So now if you look at this, some of the splotches like that and that and that are darker on this side, and these guys are lighter. And if you flip over, it's the reverse. These guys are dark, and then these guys are light. And I just like the ability to be able to control it and think about imagery. So let's assume I had a stamp that had a face like this. I could stamp my face onto the paper so it comes out this way. But if I flip the paper over and put that same image on the back, well, you can't see it through the paper, but that same stamp on the back, it would be in the opposite direction. So it allows you to play around with having mirrored images on your layouts and on your cards and on your art journals, because if you stamp it on the surface on one side and on the bottom on the back on the other side, it gives you the opposite image. All right, so this is almost dry completely. So that's a piece that I would be using, and you can see the white come out. You can see the color in the paper come out. The texture is intense black and grayish black. So there's lots of things going on in that one little piece of paper. And let me just bring this guy back. All right. Now this guy, he's still a little bit wet. I'm going to play a little more with him using some paint markers in a few minutes, but it's just not dry enough yet. Okay, I'm going to put these aside. Now, the next thing I want to play with is the idea of creating texture using elements. So I have some, it doesn't have to be canvas. I just happen to have canvas birds. And I'm going to do double duty here. I am going to color the birds at the same time as I color the paper, but I'm going to use them as two separate things. I can use them together in the same collage piece, or I can put these away for another time, or the paper away for another time, and use those. And these little guys have resist on them, so I'm curious to see what happens when everything's going in the same direction. Okay, I'm just going to spread these out a little bit. And let's see. I have some other things I can play with here. I'm going to put some lines. These are pieces from a 49 and Market collection. I left this without ink because I could reuse this again, but I kind of like the idea of them being stripes, and you can see I've already used this technique once. So I'm just going to put some lines in amongst all these things. And I have this arrow, which again is 49 and Market, and I am going to have an arrow going this way. I dropped a couple of words. Now, I'm not necessarily going to use this as one piece on one piece of work. I can use bits and pieces of this because that's what collage is all about. Again, that's a tab. And I just kind of like, oh, look what I have. I have a frame. Let's see what happens when that frame goes in there. I'm going to move a few things up here. There we go. I'm going to put that frame at the bottom. Now I'm not sticking them down with anything because I'm spraying from above. And what else do I want to do? Sure, let's have some tickets. Let's have them in a different direction. There we go. Oh, I found another arrow. Whoops, flip it over. So this could be a composition or not. like I said, I could choose to use it all together or use it in pieces. So I'm going to get those guys out of the way because I'm done with those. And I tried this the last time. It didn't work out so well. So I think I'm going to skip it this time. Let me show you. Do I have a piece? So this is what I did last time. And you can see the images, which are the white parts, and then the spray is the green part. The only problem with this is that my background was too busy. So you want to kind of have something where the color will absorb but not take away your eye, and you'll get a clearer vision of what is actually laying out there. So let's see how this one turns out. And what do I want to use on this? I'm going to use 3 different sprays. And you know what? This is a bit messy, so I'm going to grab one of my pieces just to protect some of the things I have. And whoa, this is plopping. So that's not what I want to have happen. Oops. Sorry, I'm moving everything around here. I don't want blops, so we're going to put that one away. And we are going to pull out Snow Flurries mica spray. And that's, I've shaken that up too much. And my room is hot, so these things tend to explode a little bit. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to put some purple in there. Again, that's kind of exploded. Just want to make sure you don't get it everywhere, except on my hands. And so I've got 2 mica sprays and a regular spray. Okay, and I'm just going to let that dry a bit. I'm going to use my heat gun to dry that. I'm not going to pull anything off because if I do, it will move things around and I don't really want it to move around. And I'm going to dry straight down on it so that the pieces don't flutter and fly away. And I'm going to be about 6 inches off the paper because I don't want it to flap and move. Okay, so now I can take these pieces off. So there's my first bird, and I'm just going to give him a little bit of a dry quickly. Whoops. There's my ticket stubs. There's another bird. And you can use anything. You can use letters. You can use cardstock shapes. Okay, I'm just going to pull them all off. This one shifted a little, but it didn't turn out too badly. And once I get everything off, I can dry it nice and firmly. All right. So if you look at this piece, you can see my bird shapes. You can see my tags. You can see my arrow here. You can see my other arrow down here and the frame and another bird over here. I'm wondering if you're able to see that okay. Once I attach this to something with the the collage medium. There's two ways to attach it. You can just simply put collage medium down and place this on top of that collage medium and then collage over top. Or you can collage medium on both sides of the tissue so that it soaks in a little bit more and then it becomes more transparent. So if you're just sticking it on, it's less transparent than if you collage both sides of the piece of tissue and then stick it on. So we're going to let that dry just a little bit more. And what else? Oh, I want to show you tearing. So there's a couple of different ways you can get the pieces. Maybe I should just clean up a little bit here. There we go. I'm waiting to accidentally put something in that black. I should probably lift that up just in case. There we go. Everything is safe now. And this paper is done, so it's completely wet. All right, so let's look at something like this. So these, I can tell which pieces were torn with water and which were just torn dry, because when you tear with water, it is a little hairier than if you tear when it's dry. And then the other thing you can do is you can just simply fussy cut it as well. So this is a piece that's fussy cut. When I mean pulling things apart with water or dry, let me just get an example here. Okay, so maybe something bigger. Here we go. This is better. So I can go in with my fingers and just carefully tear around. Paper has direction. It tears easily in one direction. It doesn't tear as easy in another direction. And you have to be careful because you can tear into your pictures very easily by tearing in the direction it doesn't like. But if you're careful, you can go around the image and just pull apart the outside pieces like that. So that gives you a torn edge. Now, if you use water with a paintbrush, so I've just got a wet paint water brush here, and I'm going to go all the way around the outside of my image. Try not to touch the image you're tearing, because once it gets wet, it gets less stable. And I'm just going to go front and back all the way around my image. And then the tearing becomes much easier, supposedly, she said. It tends to follow the line, and you don't tend to dig into your, which I just did. Look at that, eh? You don't tend to dig into the actual image. So this will dry, and if you look at the difference, you get a lot of creasing and crinkling happening when you're pulling apart a dry piece than when you're pulling apart a wet piece. The wet piece is virtually flat, and this one has all kinds of wrinkles from where I had to force the tear. So it's easier to tear once you've put water around the image that you want to get away from the tissue. And like I said, the other thing that you can do is the fussy cutting, and that's not super easy either with tissue, but it gives you that really smooth line if that's what you prefer. All right, so that's tearing tissue. What else did I want to say? Fussy cutting, tearing with and without water. Repeat patterns. Repeat patterns are awesome. So if you're using, let's say, our circles that we see, you can see those there. And then I have circles on this pattern. So putting patterns together that have similar elements to them, and look at that face has a circle in it. And, you know, you could even go as far as going into your other packs that actually already have circles all over them. You can cut things in circular shapes. You can use your negative and positives in circular shapes. So all kinds of different things you can do. And I've lost, where did that go? The chaos that is my craft room. Oh, nope, that's not it. Okay, there it is. And so this, even though it's not circular, it has the sort of imagery of being circular. So it kind of would fit in if you were doing multiples of a shape. All right, now the other thing that can be done, I'm going to put this aside because we're going to make something with that. Where are we now? All right, so we're going to use these little guys. And I think I've done most of that. So now we're going to make something. So I just randomly glue in jelly prints and things. Like if I off roller, I'll off roller in right directly into my junk journal. These are actual prints that I glued down. This is ripped up prints. So you can start with a base that is like that, or you can create your own base and start with something that you've done with all tissue. I think I would like to combine tissue and jelly printing and some paint markers. So there's my paint markers. They're the Spectrum Noir paint markers. And I want to put some elements together. And I do also want to use the faces. So a couple of things that I have mentioned already is that when you glue things in, you want to, this is a sheet I did. Isn't this gorgeous? It's windows. I want to create a couple of, I may not be able to use that today. Oh, how sad. These work a little bit better. So I'm just kind of pulling together my colors and seeing if there are images. Look at how cool that image is. You can't see it, but I could see it. So the color comes up from underneath. I could use the actual piece, which is right here as well. Where's my birds? Maybe a couple of my birds could go in there. Oh, I like that bird. So I've already pre-colored the backs of these to be able to use them. So now I'm just going to kind of figure out what I want to use and what I don't want to use. I feel like, all right, so I'm just going to tear right into this. Again, like I said, it doesn't necessarily want to tear with you. So you have to be sort of vigilant. Oh, there we go. So I feel like I want to maybe put something like that. And I'm going to continue this circle motif in the faces. And I like some of this stuff, but I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to get a piece that has light and dark in it. Or actually, you know what? I'm going to use this one, light and dark. And I'm going to make it sort of circular as well by making the edges all rounded. There we go. And which side do I want to use? Actually, I think I like this whole thing shifting right down there. Don't mind the hard edge there. The other thing I want to put on is just a piece of the white tissue. Now this one has a saying on it, which you will see a little bit better. That's going to go out from under here. going to just be a peek. And this one, I'm going to put on card and have that as my actual focal point. So we'll do that later. First, let's get some of this down. This piece I want down first because I want to do some pen work. So get my collage medium. And I've become very, very fond of this really horrible brush I have for adding collage medium. For some reason, it just seems to be the brush that works the best, even though it's a garbage brush. All right. I never put my brushes right into my pots. I always use my brushes off the board, and I'm doing both sides and the page, because I want this to really get nicely stuck down. So that's the back. This is the front. Might be a little higher than I had before. And I am not worrying at all about, oh, except when it takes too much. I was going to say not worrying about wrinkles, but that was a little more than a wrinkle. There we go. All right. And this mixed media really makes it feel like the paper is coming out from the other paper. It really gives it some more substantial hold. And this side, this is the side I want.
Kris, we have another question from Ellen.
Yeah.
She is asking, can we use regular glue with collage paper, or does it have to be the collage medium?
You can use regular white glue that dries clear. It cannot be a white glue that dries white. I wouldn't, okay, so I'm going to say this. It's only based on my experience, because I do know other people that actually have used it. I wouldn't use rubber cement, just because the texture is rubbery, and for me, it feels weird. Like I can feel it after the piece is put together. And the thing about collage medium, it's an all-in-one, right? It not only glues down, but it seals as it glues. And I just find that rubber cement feels like it's going to pill up all the time. So don't use rubber cement. You may be able to use a clear gel glue. I have not done that because I love the way the collage paste works. And previous to having collage paste, I used to use the white clear glue. So yeah, that's my information.
Thank you. We also have a question from Leanne.
Yeah.
Do any of the packages of collage paper include plain sheets, or are they all pre-printed?
The packages, you can get a package of plain sheets. The packages that are printed all have printed sheets of either the white on white or the black on white. But you can also get just plain tissue papers.
I believe we have some packs that we had for Mari Clark's class on the weekend. Yeah. I'm just not sure if they are available online yet. So Leanne, if you can please send us an email to remind us. I'm just going to pop up the email address here if I can find it. Here. Leanne, if you can send us an email, remind us. I will take a look when we're back in the store tomorrow. Thanks, Kris.
No problem. So the other thing about putting glue on both sides of the paper, I mentioned before, it helps the white pieces recede. So it really makes the white pieces much more transparent so that they go into the background a lot better. And And like I said, I glue everything down, and then I make sure I also go over it to meld it to the page. Okay, so I have my two sayings. Here's my white saying. I'm going to trim it up a bit because it's got some extra white around it that I don't really need. And I want the focus to be on the words. So I am just getting all the excess white off. Now I don't throw that away. That's perfectly good to throw into your paper making bag. And your paper making bag is that thing that you're collecting all your bits and pieces of tissues and napkins and anything you do with collage, because it looks great with the lighter papers. Now this may not show up as, oh yeah, there we go. It's very subtle, which is what I want because it's not my main thing. It's more like a texture. Okay. Now, before I go to making my final label, I'm going to make sure my collage medium is closed. I'm going to get a tissue. I'm going to get rid of some of my leftover collage medium. And I wouldn't put a whole huge amount of collage medium out on your work surface. I prefer to just keep going and dipping in and getting more, because otherwise you could waste. And I'm not a big fan of waste. I'm going to hit this with the dryer for a quick second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting that on as the title of the page. And I'm going to go in now and do some work with white pen, black pen. I might even do gold pen. Oh, I forgot about the third way you can add color. So let's say I want to add some color to the faces that are my people. Let's see. I'm just going to use some of my fluorescent paint. So I want to use a little bit of I'm going to use the pink, not the red. Little tiny bit of pink just to blush up the cheeks. Super tiny little bit, like literally just whatever's on the lid there. Get some water. Get a fine paintbrush. A little bit of water. And you can paint over top of your tissue as well. So I'm just blushing up. And the reason I'm touching it is because it's too watery, but I don't want it to be fluorescent. I just want it to have a little bit of a glow, a pinky glow in the cheek area. There we go. When I bring it to you, you'll probably be able to see that just a little bit better. Gonna need a tiny little bit more. There we go. There's always one side that causes problems, right? All right, that needs to dry a little bit, and I'll play with that some more. Get rid of you guys. Put that into my water. Always have a dish of water nearby. Okay. Yep, that's good. So I'm going to pop out my white, my black. Easier said than done. And some gold. Okay. So I need to put something more on this bird. So I'll shake up my marker, get it nice and loose, make sure it's ready to go. And
what kind of markers are these, Kris?
these are Spectrum Noir acrylic paint markers. This is the 4 set that gives you the metallics in black and white. They come in a multitude of colors. These are medium tips, so they're a little bit chunkier than your Sharpies and your tri-blends and things like that. But I like them because they're chunky, because then you can just, do lines like this and you don't have to worry. Nice thick lines that show up well in your junk journals. And just following the edge of the bird so it shows up a little bit. There we go. Just lightly. So these ones you can use them with a light hand, or you can use them with a heavier hand. And you can see all the detail I was able to get in that bird. All right. And so I'm going to do just add some little bits. Just little sketchy marks. Some dots. So even though this little image here is receded into the background, I'm bringing it a little more into view by surrounding it with dots. And doing a little bit of line work. Okay. Now, I'm not doing anything there because I think that's where I'm going to put my saying. Now, I could put my saying straight down if I wanted to, but I kind of want it to have some girth. So I'm going to glue it to the cardstock and then pop dot it onto that page. So using my distress again. This time I'm not really worried about having the white go clear, so I'm just going to glue one side. But I find you do have to still put pressure on it. And I'm using my dried out paintbrush for that. Okay. And I'm going to take some gold. And I'm just going to outline the edge of this. And I'm not worried about it being a straight line, because that's what the handmade is all about. All right. Grab my pot dots. I have pop strips. So other ways I could have done this title is to cut around the shape of the words, but I chose to keep it, because this is so rounded, I chose to keep this more angular. There we go. And there's your finished page. So it does not take long to do this. How long have we been doing this? Like an hour. That's it. And you've got a finished page. So
That looks amazing, Kris.
Well, thank you very much. It was fun. I love doing this stuff. It's mindless.
Well, and I think it's fun just to experiment and play and see all the different things that can be done.
Yeah.
Well, if you have nothing else to add, Kris, we've got lots of great comments. Shelly is saying it's gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
Ellen says, plus a bunch of extras, all that good stuff. So thank you very much for a really informative session tonight. Lots of fun. So hopefully everyone will pick up at least one pack of collage paper and see what you can do with it.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many other things you can do with it too.
We may just have to have you come back in a couple of months and do some other demos as well.
Awesome.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow, which is What's New Wednesday, for our last secret word contest for our anniversary month. This month is winding down like you would not believe. And we will try to post as many reminders as we can, but just a reminder that we are closed on Saturday in the store for the Labor Day long weekend, last long weekend of the summer. So we're going to take some time with our families and come back recharged to reset in September. So thanks very much, Kris. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.